Hey there, fellow exiles. Welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be talking about my day 2 update for my Energy Blade Inquisitor. Now we're playing Stormbrand, so it's my Stormbrand Energy Blade Inquisitor. Thought that's a mouthful. So, what have we done today? So there have been significant upgrades to the build since yesterday. I ended up spending a long time in Sanctum farming up some divines, and we even started completing our Atlas. I'm now at 54 Atlas completion as well. And I've switched out of Warlock and we are now going into the Primalist. I still have 2 more Wildwood Ascendancy slots to go, but we'll get into that in a bit. So the first thing we'll go over is the gear, and then I'll kind of go over the skill, and then we can head over to POB and I'll show you some math, and then finally we'll get into gameplay. First thing in the gear, there have been lots of changes and lots of upgrades. First thing you'll notice is that my Energy Blade actually has an Abyssal socket. This is because I used a Hollow Fossil on my weapon to give it an Abyssal socket. And this is the one mod on a rare weapon that will carry over to your Energy Blade. So this was a decent upgrade considering I didn't really have any gems to put there. Outside of that, we did upgrade into a 6-link Ivory Tower. I basically threw fusings at my old chest until it hit 6-link, and this is what I have now. I also decided to get a bunch of catalysts and buy a better roll for my Astramentus and my Cyclopean Coil. Even though these items are temporary, I would rather have them be good, although temporary, than be bad and temporary. And this didn't cost very much. It was about 1 divine between the 2 of them. In terms of net cost after selling the old ones. I also crafted or bought this pair of gloves for 1 divine. Basically gives +1 level of socketed gems, and this is really important because I also got a level 4 enhance to attach to my Energy Blade, so we no longer need to run Replica Void Eye, and now my Energy Blade gives me 13% against the 50% less, which is about 26% more energy shield. So the difference that my Energy Blade makes is actually less than 6,000 flat energy shield reduction. Aside from that, we also have a new pair of boots. I crafted these boots on stream. I actually got really lucky. We have tier 1 cold res, tier 1 lightning res on a tier 1 fractured chaos res base. With move speed and chance to avoid being chilled, which is the best move speed mod possible. And then the goal here is to replace the life benchcraft with a 100% chance to avoid being frozen, so eventually I can switch my Pantheon over to Arakali because I really hate damage over time. Aside from that, we also got 2 synth rings. The first one is Arcane Surge on hit with spells. Because this build is blood magic, it's hard to get Arcane Surge, and it's basically just 10% increased cost speed, and 10% increased cost speed is better than any ring implicit that we can generally get. So I ended up buying this for about 30C or 50C. If these end up getting expensive, don't buy them. It's not that big of a deal. 10% cost speed isn't worth multiple divines. This is something you'll want to drop later anyway in favor of something like percent strength or percent int. So I wouldn't recommend buying this if they get too expensive. The other ring, however, I would heavily stress buying is synthesized gold ring with onslaught on hit. This is actually kind of nuts. I was watching Lance, more on that in a bit, but Lance recommended getting an onslaught on hit ring, and this was actually very, very, very good for the build. It rounds out your shield charge speed very, very well for mapping, and it's super nice, especially even when you're running Sanctum. Just having that extra movement speed as you're running around, it just feels extra nice. This would definitely a worth it upgrade. I would probably prioritize getting this if you can. Now, outside of that, I also ended up needing to upgrade my bismuth to get a higher roll because of the lack of resistances on my rings now. With the flasks up, my resistances are pretty much very close to being exactly capped. So there is that. And finally, the last upgrades I made to the gear was I ended up getting 3 jewel sockets after respecking my tree. Now, before we get to the jewel sockets, a little bit on the tree. I was actually talking to Lance, and he ended up doing a tree like this, which for blood magic ends up being more efficient for the same amount of points if you don't go Warlock. Now, Primalist is probably the strongest ascendancy of the game because of these trinket slots, and I was running Warlock for 50% RMR to get in Tempest Shield. However, Cyclopean Coil here gives you shock immunity, and later there's actually, I think, a way around getting shock immune as well. So having shock immunity from Tempest Shield wasn't really useful. Therefore, I just decided to bite the bullet, drop Tempest Shield, and go Primalist instead. And now we're pathing this way to get the RMR to fit in the rest of the auras. So we basically have everything except Vitality and Tempest Shield. We have Wrath, Discipline, Zealotry, and Haste. Another thing on auras is I did end up dropping Determination as well, mostly because it's not a very large amount of armor, and now that I have about 10,000 ES, you don't really feel the difference between having Determination and not having Determination. So just having a damage aura there instead just felt a lot better. You still obviously have the choice to go Determination instead of Wrath. I just didn't feel the difference, so I ended up not running it. Now, aside from that, of course, let's get into the actual jewels I ended up buying. I got one with the reservation efficiency. Now, you're actually going to want one with 2% RMR, otherwise you're not going to have enough mana to cast your Immortal Call, nor your Stormbrand, nor your Void Sphere. So it's very important to get one jewel with 2% RMR. Your second jewel is going to be, I just ended up opting for a crit multi with life and energy shield, and I exalt slammed this, got lucky and hit cold resistance. Now potentially this might actually push towards me being able to drop cold resistance as a suffix on my boots and maybe go for some strength or int on my boots instead, which would obviously help me scale more ES and more damage, which is super lucky because we ended up getting cold res on both of them. And then the third jewel is the new jewel from the new league. So if you guys don't know this jewel, that which was taken is basically a jewel that gets modifiers from the charms that your Primalist or the Wildwood can get on her charms. And this jewel is kind of insane. I ended up being pretty lucky. I sniped this one for about 3 divines, and it gives me 7% strength and 23% crit multi. The crit chance is kind of irrelevant because I'm already crit capped without Assassin's Mark and without power charges, which is pretty funny, but it's a pretty nice 2-stat. I just basically thought of this as a pseudo Emperor's Might that's just better because instead of increased damage it comes with critical strike multiplier. So this was a very good purchase for me at 3 divines. There's a lot more modifiers you can look for on these things. You can get stuff like Culling Strike, or even Juggernaut's armor applies to elemental damage taken, in which case you definitely want to go Determination. But yeah, there's a lot of options there. Finally, when talking about the passive tree, I want to talk about the Primalist of the Wildwood. Now this ascendancy is kind of broken because you can basically yoink miniature versions of other ascendancies for your own liking, and a lot of the times because you can tailor make the ascendancy to your choice, it's going to be the best ascendancy for a lot of builds. In this case, I only have 1 slot because I haven't mapped a lot. I've been spending a long time in Sanctum and I only just about started mapping, but this is the one I ended up purchasing for about 1 divine, which is strength and int, and some consecrated ground applies increased damage taken. Now even though I don't have the conk ground node yet, what I do have is Zealotry, and Zealotry is dropping conk ground when I hit rare unique enemies. So having that conk ground applies increased damage does actually do wonders. Now the plan is to also get 1 more charm with consecrated grounds effect linger for 2 seconds, so that I will instead switch Augury of Penitence into Sanctuary. This is not for the damage because the damage actually comes out to be about the same, if slightly worse, but more because of the regen, because consecrated ground will give me regen and I want passive recovery because my active recovery is already taken care of with instant leech. The only thing that's kind of lacking is passive recovery since I dropped vitality switching over to this ascendancy. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the changes. Now real quick, what I would like to do here is hop into POB for a second, mostly because there are a couple of changes that the build has gone through in terms of in terms of the config and the math over here. So I'm gonna also, I have the Imgur linked over here, but I also have all of this in the notes section, basically explaining the damage difference between old Stormbrand and new Stormbrand. And the TLDR of this is, feel free to go through this. My math might be incorrect, but I have cross-checked this with multiple people and they have said this comes out to be correct. However, if you do find errors, please let me know. But basically the difference between the old Stormbrand and the new Stormbrand comes out to be about 82% more damage on the new Stormbrand. So as you can see here, we've changed the Stormbrand config into 82% more damage. So this is a very, very, very accurate representation of what your damage is going to be. Alright, finally, to conclude the video, I'm going to show you guys a quick Phoenix, which I managed to drop here. So let's just ID this and go in, I guess. This seems perfectly fine. Of course, Maven witness this because I don't have all my Atlas done yet. And hopefully you guys can see how the build runs. Now, the build is significantly better today than it was running yesterday. Courtesy of all the upgrades, of course, are significantly faster. It's also very, very good for the league mechanic. I find myself very rarely dying. I'm very tanky in here. Don't really have issues as long as I'm dropping some Stormbrands at my feet as I'm walking, so that they basically automatically attach and kill whatever whatever comes up to me. And this is basically how it runs in the league mechanic. Now, in hindsight, I'm now thinking that it might be a bit dangerous having the map boss potentially covered with wisps, considering this is a Guardian map, but I suppose it's a little bit too late for that. We'll just go through, kill as much as we can. Now, truth be told, one thing I don't know about the mechanic is I don't really understand when it decides to kick you out of the mechanic. If any of you guys know the answer to that, please leave a comment down below, because I still don't fully understand that. But yeah. Now you can see, once you actually get into mapping, this build runs very, very, very quickly. One thing I would like to do with my charms is, I think I want one charm with phasing on kill, because right now the lack of phasing really does get on my nerves, especially in tighter corridors where shield charge is less mobile. Yeah. Especially for situations like that, like having phasing would be absolutely huge, where you shield charge into something that you can't move from. I have been speccing into Ultimatum on my tree right now. However, I found that it doesn't feel too rewarding without all the nodes. So I'm probably gonna hold off till I spec more nodes. But yeah, as you can see, my single target damage, absolutely bonkers. Pretty much one-shot that Phoenix. That's pretty much how most of the game has been once I got the build together. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the quick update video. And I'll see you guys next time. See ya.